dudes rocking like tactical gear, riot gear, to beat the shit out of like otherwise peaceful protesters that are 18 years old.
Hello there, everybody. How the devil are we all? I'm not great, but relieved. Relieved is what I am. I'll be honest with you, a little bit drinky poos. Okay, a little bit. Not that anyone cares, and I'm not expecting you to. But I went to the football today. We did win the game. We did what we needed to do, but we were still relegated. The damage had basically already been done. You can't beat Rotherham or fucking Huddersfield, you pair of cunts. Fucking rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Anyway, but I'm calm. I think I've described in the past how Birmingham City Football Club are a fucking millstone around my neck. They are one of the banes of my existence. I both love and loathe them in equal measure, I'm quite sure. And so I was just dreading today. So the fact that it's over, and we went down as I was expecting us to anyway, I just feel calm. It's like, you know when you vomit? You know when you vomit for like quite a long time and this, like, it feels like hell. It feels like you're literally going through hell. And then when it's over, there's like a really, almost like euphoric, not high, but kind of a euphoric vibe. There's like a real release of tension. You feel better than you did before. It's sort of like that, really. The inevitable happened. To be honest, we've been treading water for fucking 10 years. It's been embarrassing. And we're in financially a much better situation to deal with the relegation anyway, so it's fine. We'll be alright. But, you know, it's still shit. It's still a very unpleasant... it's been a fucking horrible season too. God, we've been shit. Wayne Rooney can fuck off so much. Yanks do not know how to run a football club. Well, that's just definitive. They haven't got a fucking clue what they're doing. I mean, look at fucking Bowley at Chelsea. £3 billion and you're fucking treading water in mid-table. You might just about scrape into the fucking Conference League. You're a joke. I mean, look at fucking... Shut up, Logan. Anyway, I'm available on YouTube as well. If you didn't just hear me go on to that, because I forgot to have the fucking thing up so I can see the chat. Anyway. What is relegated? Oh, God. Yeah, he was, as friends Rust. Honestly, you sack a guy who's got you in the fucking in the playoff spots. Not that we'd have stayed there, actually, as it works out, because we weren't good enough. But if you sack a guy got you in the playoffs, and then hire a guy who's got no experience, what has he fucking done as a manager to deserve any kind of job? Hey, mate, fucking cunts. Doesn't matter. Anyway, let's not get into it. Relegation basically means. In American Major League sports, when you finish bottom of your division, nothing happens. In fact, actually, it can end up being rather good, can't it? Because you get better draft picks. Firstly, there's no draft picks in the UK, so that's not a thing. And secondly, the divisions are arranged hierarchically. So if you finish in the bottom 3, or in one case 4, but let's just say 3 to make it less complicated, you go down to the division below that. And if you finish in the top 2, and then there's like a playoff thing. So let's just say top 3. It doesn't matter again. You go up into the division above that. So that's how that happens. So you can rise and fall. So for instance, back when I was at uni, the local team, Cambridge United, who I went to see a few times, and it was a lot of fun. They were in what was called the Conference League, in the Conference, right, which is the division below the professional divisions. And Birmingham City were in the Premier League, literally the best league on earth. We were 4 divisions apart. Next year, we're going to be probably in the same division. So that's a thing. Looking forward to that. Oh yeah, John Gale, yeah. An absolute belter. Actually, this is technically it was this was from 1991. We were the last time we were in the 3rd division of English football was 1993-94. I remember it. We technically won the double that year, in that we won what was then the 2nd division, as it was then called, which is now League One. Because let's make it complicated. Fuck it, who cares? It's the 3rd tier, so the 3rd best division in English football. Let's say 3rd best rather than 3rd least worst. We won that division, and we won the Auto Windscreen Shield, which is like the lower league cup. And I remember that because I went to that. I was about 7 years old or something, and we went to the old Wembley. We went to the old Wembley before they knocked it down and made the good shit new one. This was the shit good old one. And we won with the first ever golden goal winner in English football. Paul Tate with a cross from Ricky Otto. Oh, what a time to be alive. I do remember the Anglo-Italian Cup. I remember it well. I think I remember us beating Bologna 1-0 at St Andrews one of the nights. Anyway. So, anyway, yeah. So we were looking at this. We were in the pub after the game, drowning our sorrows and looking forward to hopefully a more successful year next season. Yeah, Shrewsbury Town, we're coming for you, you pricks. AFC Wimbledon, we're going to fuck you up. Anyway. Yes. So last time we were in the 3rd division was 1994. And so we were looking through, like, because that was 30 years ago. Like, what happened in 1994, right? We were looking, like, because now the internet's everywhere. Like, you can just look shit up, you know? And so, so we were looking it up, and there were various funny things, and we found out there was a public vote in 1994 in Britain, right? And do you know the widget, the little plastic ball they put in cans of beer to make it like stay fizzy? That was invented in 1994, or released anyway, whatever, and it won the public vote. In 1994, the widget, the little plastic ball, narrowly beating out into 2nd place this up-and-coming new piece of technology called the internet. Now, you might be thinking to yourself that they got it wrong. I will argue this point. Alcoholism is less dangerous than the internet. So actually, I think in hindsight, they probably got it right, actually. Okay? I think they probably made the right call. All the way back in 1994. Spicy take, I know, but I'm sticking with it. So... yeah, we've got some Israel-Palestine debates to take a look at. Yeah, so and a couple of updates from the local elections as well. Right, if you enjoy my streams, and why the fuck would you? Honestly, I don't know. I am very much the Birmingham City of the internet, i.e., I'm shit and more expensive than I should be. But you can hit the follow button. You can also subscribe. You can subscribe with Amazon Prime. Yeah, you can give subs to the community. You can. It's a beautiful way of assisting me in not dying. I don't know why I'm making it weird. Anyway, you can you can give subs to the community. You can do bits messages. 200 bits or more will get you a text to speech. You can do super chats. Via the Streamlabs link below. You can $2 or more, they get you a text to speech. You can do you can help me out on Patreon and PayPal. You can I'm more eloquent when I'm drunk, bizarrely. I just realised that. I was getting through it quite smoothly, which is just a bit weird. It is a Boston accent. It's a Boston accent there. Birmingham. It's Boston, mate. Actually, we're playing that. Let's have a go. Yes, you can go over to the Discord. You can go over to the Discord. You can check me out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Bebo, MySpace. Name some other Friends Reunited. You can do all of these things. What the fuck am I talking about? Oh, fuck me. That was a nasty burp. I apologise. Right. How's my liver doing? It's fine until the morning. It'll be fucked in the morning. I'm going to be in a right state. Also, I'm on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. You can do super chats there, or you can become a member for as little as 99 pence. These are things that are available. Where are we? Birmingham.
City of love, it's a city of sunshine. All of your dreams now, they can come true. And Birmingham, it's bloody Christ. Birmingham,
it's Boston, mate.
oh Birmingham, you are my love.
Take me now. Quality old school memes. Oh yeah, so hang on a minute, hang on. Where are we? So, a couple of updates from the local elections here in the UK. Where are we? So yeah, oh these fucking wankers, right? So we talked about Sadiq Khan, didn't we? Right? We talked about Sadiq Khan being like basically a shoo-in to become mayor of London, and overnight, before they'd even started counting the votes, the Tory fucking client quote-unquote journalists started putting out this shit. I don't know why they did, like it was going to make any difference. The votes had already happened, but whatever. So Laura Koonsberg says, what's going on in the London mayoral race? No votes have been counted, so hold on to your hats, but it's clear the race is much closer than polls had suggested. Andrew Pearce says, persistent rumours that Tory Susan Hall has pulled off a major upset in London mayor elections. Tom Harwood, big if, but if Susan Hall wins London, literally no elections last night will matter in the public consciousness. Sadiq Khan won. Really very conclusively. He won by, hang on, where are we? Where are the numbers? Here we go. He won by 270,000 votes. Over 11%. Which was basically within the margin of error of exactly what the polls said it was going to be. The polls were about 14%, so yeah, that's close enough. Fucking mental. Honestly, these client journalists are a fucking joke. Couple of notable wins. Firstly, the Greens beat out the Reform Party rather handily by nearly double the number of votes. Delightful. And also, Count Motherfucking Binface beat out the fucking fascists of Britain First. Wrecked, lads. Honestly, the fucking right wing. Did Binface win? No, Binface did not win. He lost by a mere 1,064,000 votes. So nearly. He's close, you know. He's close to a win. God bless him. And he got 1%, which is a lot more than you would think for a guy who has a bit on his head. We're a serious country. Anyway, Binton first, yes. What was I going to say? Yeah, if anything, these results show me the right wing, especially like with fucking Elon Musk buying Twitter, the echo chamber they've created for themselves. The echo chamber they've created for themselves tells them that their views are much more popular than they actually are. Because they put out these things like Susan Hall's gonna fucking win, and the reform votes through the roof, and blah blah blah. And then it actually comes down to it, and people don't fucking vote for them. People don't want to fucking vote for these cunts. It turns out the Tory policy of choosing an absolute fucking headbanger, a fucking nutcase racist freak, to stand in a multicultural progressive city is not a winning stratagem, as it turns out. Fucking divs. Unbelievable. Yeah, and as was pointed out in chat by his friends Rust, Andy Burnham pissed it in Manchester. Good lad. The Liverpool mayor won in just an embarrassing landslide. Fucking huge. And I told you yesterday, didn't I? I brought you the news of the racism. Didn't I? The racism in the West Midlands. Hang on. Where are we? There was where is it? Fuck me dead. There was... we definitely did cover this, didn't we? Oh, here we go, yeah. So in the West Midlands, right? My own home county. It looked like Labour Party were going to lose, right? They should have won it very easily in this electoral cycle. Andy Street was a man who... is not very popular, particularly, and he's standing for a party that's not very popular. And, as pointed out by Supertansky, not a person I always agree with, but he does look like the Wheelstone Raider. Something it never dawned on me in the past, but he does look like the Wheelstone Raider. You want some? You shit! You got no fans! Fucking... absolute legend. That's British culture. Who said white people don't got culture? We got the Wheelstone Raider. Shut the fuck up. Anyway. Right. So, yeah. Here we go. Yeah, so the Tories looked like they were going to hold on, and this was like one of the things they were going to desperately hold on to as like their result. They were holding on in the West Midlands. They narrowly held on in Tees Valley. This was going to be enough to save Rishi Sunak. And just like that, it turns out it was a lot closer, and they ended up having a recount and all the rest of it, and Labour won. So they were all talking it up like, yeah, the Tories have held on to the West Midlands mayoralship. So actually it's fine. And they managed to still lose. Even with the Yaqub guy fucking standing and taking a huge chunk of Labour's vote off them, the Tories still managed to fucking lose. Oh, Sunak is so fucked. He's so fucked. Also, it turns out the Labour Party, they didn't even need to do the racism. It wasn't just bad that it was racist, it was pointless racism. What are you fucking doing, lads? Get a grip. And then we've got, hang on, where are we? This the BBC one, there we go, right. And then, just some of the statistical nonsense of it, the fucking Liberal Democrats. ended up winning more seats than the Tories did. The Liberal Democrats, a party that were dead 5 years ago, they were buried. And they only really fight in about a dozen different places across the country, and they still ended up with more fucking seats. Oh, the Tories are so cooked. Like, the Labour Party are not popular, but the Tories are fucking done. Stick a fork in them, they're absolutely limp. Fuck me. Embarrassing shit. The Greens had a decent night. Up to 181 there. And it's interesting. All of the fucking all of the coverage has been given to the Reform Party, who won 2 fucking seats, and yet the Greens can barely get a fucking a whiff of national coverage, and they've got 181. Fucking mental. Will I finger Baruch Goldman, Kev? Who's Baruch Goldman? Do I know that person? Who is he? I don't know who that person is. Anyway, so that happened. So some funny results from the UK Generals. Right. In terms of we're going to watch a bit more of this. We're going to pick up from where we left off yesterday. If it doesn't get particularly spicy, I do want to move on and take a look at Des Tiny, who went on the Counterpoints debate show with Ryan Grimm, I think it was, and said the wackest shit. Apparently Hamas are now turning cookies into rocket fuel, and the right wing, all of his like dick riders, have tried to genuinely prove that was the case. It wasn't, and even Destiny's come out and said he got it wrong. But they're still going. Honestly, the levels of cope from these motherfuckers is just... they're on a different level. They're on a different fucking... They're in a different world. Anyway, let's take a look at these bollocks.
Well, these are like queer anthropology students that are sitting in a fucking protest. They're a bunch of hippies, and they're getting brutally taken down by like 45-year-old dickheads from... not even from here, from like one of these like edge cities that they all live in together, and coming to brutalize them. I think this is unjustifiable. I think that is a gross misuse of funds, and as a taxpayer who pays European level taxes, if not more, I wish that I demand more from I demand more of a return from the taxes that I pay for, and I think it's my honest American right to do so, just like it's the right for these students to protest.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. You can demand that as much as you want, but it doesn't mean you can go somewhere and just post up there and expect for people to just have to be okay with it. Like I agree with you that the cops are probably there are a lot of cases where the cops are incompetent, but like the dichotomy that you're creating between the police officers arresting the protesters and not getting the people who stole Myth or Ludwig's car, in my opinion, I think they should do both, because if you don't have law and you don't have rule of law and you can't apply the law...
Baruch Goldman shot up a mosque full of Palestinians in 1994 and got beaten to death. Okay, yeah, if we get onto a hype train, I'll finger his corpse then, yeah. Fuck yeah, let's go.
Then everything is chaos, and everybody is making up their own rules constantly.
Well, I think the police were behaving in an unlawful way by going into a otherwise peaceful encampment and beating people and apprehending them. That's what I'm saying. I think it's a violation of the First Amendment to do so.
I think that
Oi, 255. What's up?
You don't view it as for example, if somebody went onto your property, and I understand this is a public university, so it's different. But I do believe that going on to somebody's property and refusing to leave...
Yay, thank you, Rohak.
...violent. It is fundamentally violent.
You're a fucking loser, mate. Again, these people fucking concern trolling about, oh no, they're encamping on private property or whatever, and not giving a fuck about the entire cities that have been razed to the ground in Palestine. Like, get some semblance of fucking perspective on the situation. Jesus Christ. This is like the old thing about the liberals siding with fascism. This is the sort of thing we mean. They'd rather protect the private property rights of these multi-fucking billion-dollar shithouse fucking university people. The fucking endowments of rich cunts built on the backs of slavery and stuff. Than basic fucking human rights around the world. Oh no, they smashed a window. Eat my dick.
Like, you're not allowing somebody to access or to use part of their property that they own.
Yeah, but
Like, that
this
is-
being different
I
is
feel like-
important though, because there's a difference between personal property, like your house or whatever, versus
Sure.
public property of a school that you are actually paying tuition to utilize the grounds on. Like, it's entirely different. That's why there's public spaces to begin with, so that people can protest in places like that, in parks and whatnot. So I guess the question I had for you at this point is, like, 1968 Vietnam War and civil rights protests are happening. They're much more violent ultimately than this round of protests that are occurring in college campuses. Like, you at the end of the day agree with the ultimate solutions that occurred, right? Like ending the Vietnam War.
Well, that's really the thing, right? Is that I can see where you're going, and you can like kind of like redirect if it's not, but like.
Also, can we just point out that this guy? Last couple of days, I checked out some of his stuff, and all of his videos are like, oh, they got exactly what the fuck they liked, blah 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 blah, right? All this shit. And now he's gone on with Hasan. He's acting like a little puppy dog, like you can contradict me if you like. You can correct me if you like. Maybe I don't know necessarily. Blah, blah, blah. Like, he's such a fucking coward. He's such a cowardly little bitch. What is this? Hero hack.
Violent. It is fundamentally violent to leave.
Yay! Thank you, Rohack.
Violent. It is fundamentally violent.
You're a fucking loser, mate. True. Fucking true. True.
Basically, my perspective is that I do agree with you on doing those things, but I think that if you use the argumentation of the ends justify the means, I think that can be used in a lot of ways that are extremely harmful. And I think that also they can always be used in very hypocritical ways, where the ends justify the means in things that I agree with, or you agree with, or somebody else agrees with, but not in cases where other people don't agree with it. And that's why I think that the only way to have any sort of a stable society is to have an official set of rules that everybody has to go off of. And if you start going off of that, or like diverging from that, everything becomes chaos, and everybody starts in.
Everyone has to agree with my set of policies and principles, otherwise, the police have to crack down on you. Do you see how you can just turn it around? You little fucking pretend civility politics bitch.
Inventing their own rules, and you have situations like what's been happening, and I think it's worse for everybody. Like you said, it's millions of dollars that it costs, and I think the truth is that if you want to change things, there is a democratic process to change things. And
yeah, except none of the major parties actually are going to give a fuck about Palestine. So is there actually? And even the minority people, fucking the RFK is even worse. Like, who the fuck is pro-Palestine in your political system? You cunt.
with the university, people do have
But
freedom.
you did say that the democratic process cannot is not going to work either in the state, in the case of Colombia, right?
Well, that's because it's not a democracy. But people can deal with it in a way that is democratic, which is simply choosing not to go there. So if people don't like what Colombia is doing,
don't get an education, sweaty.
They can choose not to go to Colombia. So I don't really see the problem here. Why does Colombia have to, agree with these people or bow down to them if these people don't even need to be there?
So that's a great question. And the best answer perhaps comes from James Baldwin, American writer and civil rights activist.
Jimmy!
who once famously said, and I don't want to paraphrase this, so I'm going to give you the actual quote here. Said, "I love America more than any other country in the world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize it perpetually." This is the exact same answer that I give to people as well whenever they tell me, "Why don't you fucking love America if you're such a goddamn hater of America?" Now, the reason why I have the financial freedom.
This is effectively the same quote as like the, I don't agree with what you're saying, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. So
Yeah, but that's not true, Asman. You won't even leave your fucking house. What are you talking about? You're going to defend my right to say some shit. Shut the fuck up.
I agree with you. I think so, but I don't think all types of criticism are the same. So yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, no. What I was trying to point to here with this quote is that I think that you and I both agree that dissent is healthy, right? And
Yeah,
I think that
absolutely.
I think that there are, as I've explained earlier, all throughout history we have had people who believe that their cause is righteous and their cause is just, and that their means actually their ends justify their means, right? Their methods of protest.
Yeah.
And that is I'm thankful, I guess, for people of the past for demonstrating the courage against the state apparatus that violently chooses to suppress them, so that I can live in a country where, or I can live in a world where people have shown that courage time and time again to bring us all of the amenities and all the freedoms that we now take for granted, whether it be
a great place to be.
Yeah, whether it be the American Revolution early on, which was a bourgeois revolution altogether, and there's still a lot of faults in America, but America shows a lot of promise, which it fails to meet on a regular basis. But ultimately, I choose to live here, right? And it is because
I love America. I think America's great. Yeah, I
It is
totally agree with you.
because
Well,
what I
you're
was
going
trying
to say probably the same thing, right? Is you're going to say because you care about it so much, that's why you're so critical, and that's why you're so hostile about things that you don't believe in. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Which is why I think it's wrong that the state acted in the way that it did in this circumstance. And not only is it wrong, but I also think it's hypocritical that they acted this way. This doesn't mean that, like, for example, in a hypothetical, like if a school shooter is fucking barricading himself into a school and holding a bunch of children hostage, that like I don't expect the state to be violent. You know what I mean? Of course I expect I expect them to not do what they did at Uvalde. I expect them to do to be as militant as they are against like a blue-haired queer
Hey, hello Nina. Everyone for Nina. Welcome in Nina Rena's. I don't know what the fuck. Yeah. Nina accidentally told us to call you a lesbian. Yeah, that'll do. I'll take that. Hello, I'm Kevin Logan, an accidental lesbian. You can hit the follow button if you wanted to. You're joining me on a little bit of a drinky stream because I'm a little bit fucked. So we're watching Hasan talk to an idiot while zooming in on the dog, because the dog is awesome. Hello, Storage Coffee. I'm from the UK. Now, don't let that put you off, okay? There are a lot of people who don't like the UK.
Ladies and gentlemen,
trust me, as a socialist from the UK, I hate the UK more than you do. I have to live around these fucking people. I told him to copy pasta, bro. I'm not getting in Discord with your useless ass. Ladies and gentlemen,
we got him. Victory is ours.
What the fuck? I told him to copy paste, bro. I'm not getting in Discord with your useless ass. I'm in college with a roommate doing something with my life, unlike you, so I can't get on VC. I gladly message you on Discord to hopefully show you how much of a dumbass you are. Oh, wow. That seems unnecessary. Why did you raid into me if you don't like me? What? Am I misunderstanding that completely? Is this a joke or something? Yeah. Oh, it's just a meme. It's a copy pasta. Oh, okay. I was like, what the fuck? That don't even make sense. Oh, someone said that to you. Oh, okay. Fuck me. I was like, that don't make no fucking sense. Why are you being mean to me? I don't even get that. Anyway, hello Storage Coffee and hello Nina for raiding in. No, at 250, this is not a hate raid. This is a drunken Kevin being very, very silly. And I am. Anyway, let's. It's a Viking raid. True.
English major at UCLA.
Right.
Yeah, have a good
Don't
one,
do
Nina.
that, but
Thanks for the raid.
Besides the point. That's not. There's a whole different.
And
That opens up
I
a whole
agree
different
with you.
litany of
I
problems.
think that-
So I'm
Yeah.
simply stating that in order for the state to react this way, I think there needs to be a bar.
Yeah, that's true.
There needs to be a
255.
bar. There needs to be a standard.
Am I a Birmingham nationalist? No. In order to be a nationalist, you have to, on some level, be a supremacist, right? And I am a Birmingham inferiorist.
In my opinion, and that standard was certainly not met in this circumstance.
So, like, what do
And
you
it's
think
not
that
just because the ends justify the means, but that does
Yeah.
play a role in it, because I do think that they're, like, I'm going to be intellectually honest and not act like I'm taking no stances here. I do agree with this cause. I do agree with the cause of the students. But beyond that, I think that their methods overall were
Kevin being beaten for stranded. Good. No, Justice deserves more viewers than me. Are you fucking joking? Jesus.
their methods overall were of a peaceful nature, and I think that the school reacting in this way by sending in the cops to brutally arrest these kids was genuinely fucked up, like really,
Well, where do you
really
think that
fucked
bar
up,
is then? Where do you
And-
think that bar is?
and scary as well. What do I think that bar is? I think
Yeah.
I think when you do actually engage in direct acts of violence, it makes your cause definitely a lot less palatable to many
And
others.
you don't view like blocking access or trespassing as a direct act of violence.
No, I mean definitionally under the legal code, trespass is not considered a violent act.
Oh yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah, I don't agree that, like, I don't think that it should be
blocking
considered that.
access I think blocking access in some cases can be, however.
Yes, if you're like
Yeah.
technically kidnapping someone, if you're like restricting their movement, then yes, you are doing that. But these students weren't doing that. The way I see it is like everyone dances around the rules, right? Like to the best of their ability, which is precisely the reason why, like, I guess it's like what these guys were doing is, in some ways, even though their cause is just, and I agree with their methods, and I probably would defend them if they were way worse than they are currently for that reason. I'm being
Sure.
very honest here. In this circumstance, especially, the students setting up an encampment and not allowing like random people who are like very obviously there to agitate, with the exception of like students that are genuinely, honestly, and earnestly
Yeah, rest in power, Rory Katz. Absolutely.
trying to
An
lend their
absolute
support
king.
was for good reason, so that they don't have like random fucking Nazis showing up at their doorstep and saying a whole bunch of like fucked up things that would put a lot of the Jewish students there in direct danger as well, to be like, oh yeah,
I'll be honest with you, this is boring because every time Asmongold says a dumb thing and then Hasan knocks it down, he just backtracks instantly. He just instantly fucking backtracks, so there's no point. He's just doing this Martin Bailey bullshit, and I'm just not really I don't give a fuck. This is boring. So we're gonna go and watch the Destiny thing. Fuck it. Now that the YouTube, Twitch, one of them, I don't know, have hang on. Fuck's sake! How have I managed to do this? I wanted to zoom in on Kaya, and I've managed to completely fuck up my entire setup. See, this is what you get for like. I don't know. Fucking dogs, man. Anyway, yeah, it's Mr. Divorcerelli. On whatever fucking show this is. I don't know. I don't really care. Anyway, and they're talking more about it, and Destiny's an idiot, so this should be fun. How have I managed to bollocks up my fucking frame completely with that? Oh my goodness. Right, okay. So, yeah, partner push 2024, absolutely. Thank you. Don't forget, look, my football team got relegated today, okay? And someone just reminded me of my dead cat. So if you wanted to make me feel better, you can do so by soothing my soul with money. I'm like Smaug, only poor. All I want is gold coins. And I can smell hobbits. So, yeah, so if you wanted to, you can do bits messages or subscribe. On YouTube, you can do super chats and or become a member for as little as 99 pence. You can also gift memberships to the community if you wanted to. It's a thing you can do. Fuck yeah, baby. Anyway.
You're saying that Israel needs to allow Hamas to stay there, who's been breaking international law of armed conflict for 20 years?
As opposed to Hamas allowing the Israeli government to stay there when they're breaking international law for even longer than that.
It's not peace. Nobody wants peace. People want justice.
Oops, it's just war. Gaza's unlivable anymore. Too bad it can't support Palestinian life. People are starving. It's just all an accident.
It's crazy that the numbers are so poor.
Facts.
A country that could kill so many more people. They're doing things that no other country's done. And there's a reason, by the way, which you will never recognize, why all of the surrounding Arab states have abandoned the Palestinians too, because their history has been one of violence, that first they've been encouraged by the surrounding nations.
Oh, it's got nothing to do with America basically buying them off, no.
And used by them, and then now they've been abandoned once the other nations have used them up.
That's a racist.
Yeah, like Saudi Arabia aren't violent, Egypt aren't violent, no. These are peace-loving places.
Anti-Palestinian
Racist?
Happy Friday, everyone, or Thursday night if you're a premium subscriber, breakingpoints.com if you want to get the show early to your inbox. I'm Emily Jashinsky, and you probably recognize the man sitting next to me. We're about to tee up a fascinating debate. I'm joined, of course, also by my co-host, my wonderful co-host, Ryan Grimm. And these two gentlemen that you see here are not debating for the first time. They debated in the past. Maybe some of you have watched that. They sparred over the question of Israel actually earlier this year, and then kind of subsequently continued a bit of a back and forth. So we know that we're not going to settle the debate once and for all here today, but I think what we want to do, Ryan, is really push for more moral clarity, push for more contrast as we reflect on just this last week of absolutely historic protests, rocking dozens of campuses across the country. So we have two popular proponents of the respective sides here, and we're excited to get into it.
Yeah, and to introduce them both, we've got to my right here, Omar Badar.
I might have looked into the camera. I might have done.
He's a Palestinian-American political analyst who's been following the situation in the Middle East for many, many years. On the other side, we have Stephen Bennell Jr., who's better
Mr. Benelli, please.
known by his streaming name, Mr. Borelli,
Divorced bitch.
or by like a dozen different names from if you guys watched the Norman Finkelstein debate that kind of thrust.
Like, come on, you can brush your hair, my dude. That's not beyond you, surely.
Destiny as a streaming name into this conversation. So we want to start with the campus protest before getting to the war itself. This week saw a militarized response.
No, I don't need to hide Mr. Divorcelli now. No. Twitch have changed their policy. You can watch content involving banned streamers. You just can't like host that streamer. Yeah, and the beard is pretty great. Not great. No, bad. Bad is what I meant to say. Leave me alone.
Over at VCU, UT Austin, Columbia, and a vigilante response at UCLA. So just curious for your read in general on these protests as they've unfolded.
Can you cover him up anyway?
Any double standard when it comes to kind of the free speech warriors that we've seen championing the cause of free expression on college campuses, now championing.
He did accidentally take meth, yeah.
You can't miss.
Yeah, it's the double standard is incredibly glaring. I mean, you would have to put on blinders to actually miss it. You have I think these student protesters are the conscience of this country. We are witnessing an absolutely horrific situation unfolding on the ground, and American policy is to insist on continuing to send endless weapons unconditionally to a military force that is mass slaughtering children by the tens of thousands. And these students are saying, we're taking a stand, this is not okay. If we can't impact the policy makers directly, we're going to make sure that our institutions and the money that we're paying to these institutions is not playing into this kind of mass slaughter. And what we would...
Hang on, sorry, what did I misspeak? Yeah, no, he did. He accidentally took methamphetamine, didn't he? The bald one. What? Okay, can you between yourselves, everyone, can you decide who misspoke and what they misspoke about? Is Destiny a Zionist? Destiny, I don't think, has any moral principles whatsoever. But he is on the side of Israel. But I think he's mainly doing that because he doesn't like people on the left. And so people on the left support Palestine, so he's going to, in a naysaying fashion, just support the other side. He doesn't care about this issue. He didn't, up until very recently, know anything about this issue. There's a rather famous clip of him at the start of all of this, back in October, where he's taking a look at some footage of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president, also prime minister of Turkey, and saying, when did he become president of Israel? Yeah, he doesn't understand anything about this issue. So yeah.
Witness, like, from my perspective, in a better world, cops would be going after the people who are violating American law to make sure that weapons can continue slaughtering children, rather than going after people who are peacefully protesting, overwhelmingly peacefully protesting, in order to change that policy, change American investment in it. And you're absolutely right. You have a level of demonization of these protesters. Constantly talking about them as if, you know, it's just like anti-Semitic mobs or whatever. The people leading these protests, there's a very significant portion of progressive young Jewish people who are the leaders in many cases of some of these protests. Groups from If Not Now and Jewish Voice for Peace and many others. And they are on the receiving end of tremendous hate and violence, and nobody talks about that. And as you mentioned, what we're witnessing in UCLA is absolutely horrifying. These protesters being attacked by, you know, bear spray and fireworks, and some of them being beaten up, and you see like some serious injuries. But because the climate in this country is one in which one side gets demonized, that empowers and emboldens the response, not just from police, but also from vigilantes. And I just want to note one last thing, just because Stephen is here, and I think it's really relevant, is there's a person that I know named Simone Zimmerman, who...
She's in town today for an Intercept event.
That's right. And she's one of the most conscientious and decent human beings that you'll ever meet. And she knows personal people in her life who have lost loved ones on October 7th from the attack that Hamas carried out. And she was horrified by that attack. And she's equally horrified by Israel's response and the mass slaughter.
Mehdi Hasan describing Des Tiny as bargain basement Ben Shapiro. Absolutely lovely work. Honestly, Mehdi Hasan might be the greatest import to America ever, I think. Certainly better than the white ones we sent. Just put it like that.
And she's one of those people who is fighting for a better future for Palestinians and Israelis. And she was at Passover Seder at Columbia, joining the protesters and talking about how beautiful it is that she's in that setup. And Stephen quote tweeted that tweet and said that he would like to donate thousands of gallons of kerosene, presumably so these people can set themselves on fire. And it's just such an ugly and distasteful thing to say.
Yeah, because he is an ugly and distasteful human being. Like, he literally at the start of the whole thing started joking about how, oh, I'm in favour of Palestinian genocide, actually. And then wants to be taken seriously in actual, like, intellectual circles. On serious debate shows and stuff. He's a prick. He's a complete hack.
And I'm genuinely curious of what you were thinking when you tweet things like that.
If everybody celebrated Bushnell doing his protest, more people want to protest that way, then God help them, I guess.
Yeah, but this is not about Bushnell, though.
But let's keep going in response to that, because Omar set up an interesting juxtaposition here between anti-Semitic mobs and peaceful protesters. So what we're seeing on these campuses anti-Semitic mobs, or is it peaceful protesters from your perspective, Stephen?
From my perspective, I mean, it really depends on which series of videos that you watch. I think from an American perspective, it really shouldn't matter if they're anti-Semitic mobs or if they're protesting foreign policy or whatever. In the United States, we don't have hate speech laws. You should be allowed to say really whatever you want in protest, assuming you're not violating any social or whatever the ordinances are. I know, like for some college campuses, you're not allowed to block pathways, or you can't protest if they've got events planned for graduations or whatever. And as long as you're not disrupting the peace in a way where you're like, you can't blow loudspeakers, I think, on college campuses. As long as you're following the laws, you'll be able to protest however you want.
But if you are, say, what we saw from NYPD and LAPD actually last night, if you're violating laws, university rules even, with an encampment, if you broke into the hall like they did and have been barricaded up in there, what did you make of the NYPD response just at Columbia, for example?
I like to wait till the dust settles on this because I hear so many different things about how...
Oh, yes, you definitely like to wait for the dust to settle. There's Tiny, yeah, 100%. Shut the fuck up, you liar.
Students were all being peaceful. I've seen, obviously, the videos of like some of the stuff being broken into. I think that when it comes to an analysis of how to respond to these particular events, I think that the start and stop needs to be, what are the rules and regulations in place? Because a lot of people will jump in and start arguing, well, it's a public area, so they can be wherever they want or do wherever they want, without even understanding the rules and regulations in place. I think as a blanket rule...
Yes, you definitely oppose these protests on the basics of local ordinance. Yeah. Of course you do. We totally believe you in that regard as well, yeah. It's got nothing to do with you being a fucking disgusting bigot or a naysaying fucking pro-Zionist shill. No. It's definitely about the college campus bylaws.
I don't know why this particular situation would need any kind of unique analysis. It would be the same as all protests. If you're in a private college, I understand they can remove you whenever they want. It's private property. If you're in a state-funded or public university, then there are certain areas that are supposed to remain open to the public, and they can't remove you unless you are not there in an ordinary manner if you're disrupting some other event. I don't see anything about these particular set of protests that would call for any type of unique analysis that escapes like that fundamental rule to protest in the United States. Yeah.
In your fundamental rule, then, to quote tweet with the kerosene.
I thought it was insane that you had delusional people, especially young children in the United States, that don't know any part of this conflict whatsoever, which is probably...
Which is you. You are the size of a child and you don't know anything about this conflict, so...
The vast majority of the people protesting it, that people are celebrating people setting themselves on fire. That is just unbelievable to me. You saw a guy do it in front of, I think, one of the New York City courthouses for the Trump stuff. You saw the Aaron Bushnell guy do it for who knows what reason. I guess because he thought the whole world wasn't already paying attention to this issue. And yeah, the idea of people ever celebrating themselves in a democratic first world country, setting themselves on fire for an issue that already has an unlimited amount of international attention, is unbelievably stupid to me.
Yeah, but how does...
He does look like Beaker at that angle. Oh shit, he does. God damn. He really does. Oh no. He did write a Vosh manifesto thing, yeah. Yeah. Fuck.
How does it relate to this particular instance? I mean, this is a bunch of Jewish students celebrating with pro-Palestinian students over Passover and talking about a climate in which they're coming together. Like, why did you decide to drag the Bushnell thing into this? That's
the one. I think it's funny when people disingenuously load phrases like, "Oh, all the Jewish people are protesting with these people. There are so many Jewish people." That's not true. The last Pew Research thing I saw, I think, for 2023, shows that like 90% of people who are Jewish support the existence of Israel. So the idea that
whoa, support the existence of Israel is not the same as support Israeli actions in Gaza right now. You disingenuous fuck.
There's this huge group of Israeli who are
all over the
Jewish
place.
people.
Yeah, this is not about the existence of Israel. There's no question about the fact that so many of these protest leaders are in fact Jewish. These groups, they're not imaginary. They're not a figment of your imagination. You can actually go see them and look at how large their gatherings are, how loud their voices have been. The people who are getting arrested in Congress, so many of them are progressive Jewish organizations that are leading this effort. This is not about some broader, what are the views of American Jews about the existence of Israel. We're just
what
now
are the protests about?
The protests are about ending the slaughter of the children of Gaza. That's what the protests are about. What do you mean? What does it look like?
What is the end condition of the? It's not just ending the slaughter. It's also stopping the blockade. It's also reaching a just resolution to the Palestinian conflict. It's also probably the unlimited right of return of 6 million refugees. It's probably the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish majority state. It's probably the what all does that entail?
You're conflating a ton of different things. A lot of these protesters have varying views about this. Some of them support a two-state solution. Some of them support a one-state solution. But what's bringing everybody together in this moment is a realization that what Israel is doing to Gaza is absolutely unconscionable. That you slaughter people at that scale, that Israel is clearly waging a war on the civilian population of Gaza. That's what these people are upset about, and they want it to come to an end.
And the specific thing that they're protesting, and maybe we could actually find something to agree on here, because I've seen you describe yourself as kind of a moderate who tries to balance the extremists on each side here. So the specific thing the protesters are arguing for at all of these different campuses is opening up the books of basically the hedge funds that run their universities and divesting from firms that are either linked to the war in Gaza or linked to Israel more generally. Brown University reached an agreement with its protesters that they would abandon their encampment in exchange for a vote in October to divest from that. That gets to the question of resistance and the right to resistance. And so for years, it has been the kind of policy of the right here and a lot of the center here in the United States to make it illegal to try to ban people from participating in boycotts or divestment efforts or lobbying for sanctions against Israel. At the same time, you say, well, armed resistance is clearly off the table. So if you rule out both, you only leave people with one option. So even if you don't support boycotting or divesting from Israel, do you support the right of people here in the United States to
I would have to
express?
check the explicit for how states have banned some of the BDS participation as a fundamental right to boycott. I think in the United States, you should always have the right to boycott everything except for our currency, I think. You have the right to boycott whatever you want. I don't know why that should ever be made illegal, but I know that there are particular things
There we go. Look at that.
BDS stuff that I think states look at, but of course, you should always have the right. I wish that the people that would talk about conditioning support for Israel, though, would also talk about conditioning support for Palestine, because they are some of the highest recipients of aid in the world per capita. The United States contributes a lot of that aid. It's interesting to me that it seems like we're always talking about how we need to condition aid to Israel.
Congratulations, Congress just banned all funding of UNRWA. So.
I have seen that. Yeah.
Well, so actually, that's because Stephen raised an interesting point that what's the kind of end goal of the protesters after BDS in the service of what? What does that look like?
It's a one-state solution where Jews are the minority.
Well, so you said earlier that, it sort of depends on whatever video you're looking at, that this is an anti-Semitic mob or peaceful protesters. And I think that's actually true. There's videos showing all kinds of different things, which is part of the issue of piecing together these stories via social media. So if the one-state solution is kind of the ultimate goal of the people that are protesting for BDS, what is do you think they're fundamentally anti-Semitic? Do you think are they, from your perspective, just mistaken, misguided, or are they bigoted?
I don't care. Trying to sort out the difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is almost impossible. And in practice, the two look almost identical sometimes. So the obsession of trying to figure out what is the driving thing here between anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism, I think in some cases it's good to find differences. So some people are discriminatory against poor people. Some people are discriminatory against certain races of people. And figuring out the difference here is really important. When it comes to anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism in regards to Israel, I think that the talking points of somebody who's an anti-Zionist are indistinguishable from the talking points of somebody who is anti-Semitic. So I don't know.
There are a lot of Israelis who don't support the Netanyahu policy.
That's not anti-Zionism such that they want a one-state solution. Even Palestinians don't want a one-state solution.
Omar, do you want to respond?
Yeah, it's utterly grotesque to conflate those two things. Opposition to Zionism is opposition to the state of Israel, the way it came into being at the expense of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who were driven out of their homes. And there's a different vision that instead of having a Jewish state that privileges one particular group of people over another, that you have a vision for a state in which everybody is equal. Americans would be familiar with what that vision actually looks like. You remember the era of Jim Crow and what that meant, and people who are demanding a different kind of country in which everybody is equal. That's not the same as being anti-white. It's absurd to even put these remotely in the same category.
Can I ask?
Can I just
anti-white?
If I can finish just on the point of BDS. BDS also, by the way, has been clear about the fact that they don't take any particular political solution. It does certainly happen that a lot of BDS activists do support a one-state solution, but that is not the position of BDS itself as a movement that is calling for boycotts and isolation. And just on the free speech angle, you have states all over the country that are passing laws that basically make it punishable to boycott not just Israel, but Israeli settlements that are built in the...
Exactly. Des Tiny says there are no anti-hate speech laws in America. I mean, there basically are, but only for Israel. Israel is the only country in the world that has any kind of legal protection in that regard in America. And they're trying to do that shit here in Britain too, but I don't think it'll quite hold here.
Occupied territories, and those settlements are war crimes under international law. And so you have a situation in which this country, part of its founding is that we celebrate boycotts of, as part of deep entrenched part of American culture, the boycott of British tea during the founding of the country, the Montgomery bus boycott during the civil rights movement. And now you're saying that boycotting the war crimes of a foreign country is somehow punishable, people being denied the ability to work with state governments or schools or medical facilities or anything.
Jesus Christ, could Destiny look less interested?
That is affiliated with the state. Those are transparently unconstitutional laws. They have been challenged by organizations like the ACLU. They have been defeated in court in many cases, but unfortunately they keep popping up faster than the rate at which you can challenge them, and that's a serious crisis. Anybody who's serious about being committed to free speech and saying that Americans should be able to exercise the right to boycott, including when it comes to Israel or Israel's atrocities, that's an absolutely critical issue that we're not talking enough about, that you have the power of the state being used to silence people's right to free speech, and I think that's a really important angle.
I want to move to the conduct of the war by Israel pretty soon, but on the one state versus two state question, isn't it the case that the current Israeli government position is one state? Like, there's a complete rejection across the board.
River to the sea.
Of a Palestinian state, river to the sea. So
yeah, I would say I think the Likud platform has essentially always said as much. Yeah.
Right. So okay, so
yeah, and you're fine with that apparently.
So more agreement. Like you oppose that. You think that.
I oppose it. He's in favor of the one state where the Jews live as a minority in that state.
Yeah. No. Just to be clear, the Netanyahu government and the Likud are in favor of a one.
Hang on a minute. Well, Destiny, don't you literally agree that in America there should be one state with, I mean, clearly Jewish people living as a minority? Isn't that basically the place where virtually all Jewish people live, is as a minority in a single state? Yeah.
One state in which Jews are privileged over Palestinians, with Palestinians occupying multi-tiers. If you're a citizen of Israel, you have a certain amount of rights. If you're in the West Bank, you get this many rights. And if you're in Gaza, you're completely under siege, and there's nothing that you can do.
Which is every country. You've described every country.
My vision of a one state.
Usually have more rights than non-citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're deciding that purely based upon ethnicity. You're supporting an ethno-state, which isn't massively surprising as a friend of Nick Fuentes, of course, but you know.
Well, in those countries, you don't permanently occupy those people and prevent them from having any rights and deny them citizenship as well. And that's the fundamental problem, is that Israel's vision is Palestinians can never be free. They can't get their own state, and they can't live as equals within Israel. So your status is just to be permanently occupied and helpless without rights. And that's a vision that I think is absolutely nobody who has a conscience can actually support. And my vision of a one state would be one in which everybody actually has equal rights and everybody can live equally, precisely the way that we live in the United States.
Which is a really fun position to take in the West when we have like no stake in the game. I think it's fun to scream that at protests. I think it's fun to go on Twitter and do that. I think at the end of the day that...
What do you mean you have no skin in the game? Who the fuck do you think is funding this? What do you mean you have no skin in the game? What governments are allowing Israel to do this? What governments are funding this? Western governments. You fucking knob.
That type of rhetoric is ultimately destructive to Palestinians because everybody knows that that's never happening. It's a pipe.
Oh yeah, Mr. I support the genocide of Palestinians really cares about Palestinians. He opposes you because you're being deleterious towards the existence of Palestine. Yeah, clearly.
dream. Less than 30% of Palestinians are in favor of a singular state where Jews and Arabs have the exact same rights. Literally, nobody wants that. People in Israel don't want that. It's literally you're just virtue signaling and paying lip service to an idea that is grossly unpopular across the entirety of Israel and Palestine. Not only that, the idea that you would have a singular state created where 6 million Palestinian refugees are then brought back into the state, there's no shot that any Jewish person living there who has lived through the Second Intifada, who has lived through Hamas attacks, who has lived through Hezbollah attacks, who's lived through international support for Houthi attacks, is going to feel safe in such a state. And they know that there would be absolutely no international support for them if that state were created and Jews were to start getting slaughtered en masse there.
Well, let's toss it to Omar with that for a response. And
Oh no, John, I'm not arguing. This is John in YouTube chat. I'm not arguing that Jewish people in Israel are going to accept that, but I'm arguing that the vast majority of Jewish people on Earth live in the current state that Destiny is saying is unlivable for Jewish people, which is just wrong, obviously. I'm not arguing that Israel's going anywhere. It isn't. Of course, it's not going anywhere. That isn't the point I'm at all making.
Also, I'll sort of add to that.
Of course he's drinking Red Bull. DJing.
Maybe to narrow it down a little bit. What is then, let's say, hypothetically we take the best faith argument, not from Netanyahu, but let's say an Israeli citizen who's both concerned about their safety and concerned about Netanyahu's leadership. What does the path towards peace from the perspective of an Israeli, what does that look like when they see the level of support for Hamas? And we can obviously get into why so many people in Palestine feel like they need to support Hamas.
Yeah, no, in a way you're putting your finger on the problem precisely. I mean, Israel is upset that there's so much hostility towards them, but the reason there's so much hostility is because of the way that they have treated Palestinians for decade after decade. Just the level of brutality that Palestinians have experienced under occupation has been absolutely horrific. And, when you talk about the prospects for peace, there was a time in which Palestinians recognized that there's a significant power differential, that they can't actually get freedom from the river to the sea in their own homeland. And there was an indulgence of the idea that maybe we can have a two-state compromise in which Palestinians would only get the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, which is about 1/5 of the entire territory of their historic homeland, and Israel gets to keep the other 4/5. That, from Palestinians' perspective, is a massive Palestinian compromise, bending over backwards to facilitate some kind of two states. And all what Israel was required to do is not grant Palestinians some sort of favor, but simply comply with international law by withdrawing from the occupied territories. They're obligated to do that anyway. The occupied territories do not belong to Israel. And during this period, Palestinian support for peace with Israel was skyrocketed. Public opinion showed that there's significant support for a two-state solution, and support for Hamas way down, even though Hamas was trying to destabilize the situation at the time, committing acts of violence. They did not enjoy any support among Palestinians. It is only when it became clear that Israel has no interest whatsoever in allowing Palestinians to have a state and spent
Hello, Marcus. How are you?
the entire so-called peace process building more and more and more settlements, just expanding them throughout the occupied Palestinian territories, where Palestinians saw the prospect for a Palestinian state shrinking by the day on the ground. They understood that this entire process was a sham, and
John, I don't know who exactly you think you're arguing with here. I'm not arguing that Israel shouldn't exist. Nobody is saying that Israel shouldn't exist. I don't know why you're making these obviously absurd arguments, or positing these absurd arguments as if there would be something I would possibly agree with. Yeah, the vast majority of Jewish people in the US believe that Israel should exist. Actually, I would argue probably a vast majority of non-Jewish people also think Israel should exist. Our argument isn't that Israel should disappear. Not that I'm saying that there are no such people who exist, I'm sure there are, but most people who support the Palestinian people don't think that Israel should just fucking disintegrate into nothingness. The point is that Israel's current actions in Gaza are immoral and illegal and need to cease.
the fact that Israeli restrictions were increasing, Israeli violence was ongoing, it became clear that this was not going to be a path in which Palestinians can get a real state. And that's when you got the shift in public opinion back in terms of supporting for armed resistance as the only way, because clearly Israel could not be talked into seeing Palestinians as equal human beings and granting them.
But then what now?
A shorter version maybe for Stephen to respond to is that the way to defeat Hamas is through peace, not war. What's wrong with that?
It sounds really brutal, but the issue is that the unlimited amount of international support for the Palestinians means the Palestinians will never look to peace. They should. The
unlimited amount of international support. Considering the most of the powerful countries who actually matter in this regard, i.e. people who can give them diplomatic and monetary support, don't support Palestine and are supporting Israel, what the fuck are you talking about? Unlimited international support for Palestine. You live in a different world. You exist in a different world, Borelli.
They always have an unlimited reservoir internationally of people who will encourage the delusions that if they continue to fight, they're going to get a better deal. It's the reason why they walked away in 2000 from Camp David. It's the reason why they walked away.
Oh, God, he's got all of the Hasbro talking points. He's got all of them.
Tabba Summit is the reason why Abbas walked away in 2008 from Olmert. It's the reason why the Oslo
do the dialogue tree. Yeah, go for it.
Accords were never negotiated in 93. That period of violence that he's talking about from 93 to 2000, where the Israelis were continuing to expand settlements into the West Bank, is true, but Palestinians also continue.
But that's actually, let's ignore that and focus on something else. So you argue they are just stealing West Bank territory illegally, making a two-state solution impossible. Brilliant.
To engage in terrorist activities. A lot of people didn't trust Arafat because Arafat would sign on to a deal for the Oslo Accords, and then he would go over to Switzerland and he'd make speeches in universities about how, like, yeah, we agree to this now, but, you know, we're going to get them as soon as we got a little bit, we're going to take more, which is ironically what they've accused Israel of doing for the past 100 years. I think that in order for this conflict to actually start to reach some kind of resolution, I think that, again, it sounds mean, but Palestinians need to feel like they have something at stake. And it looks like they do, but in reality, politically, Palestinians have never lost anything because people continue to make them feel as though they can always go back to borders that existed 80 years ago.
Hello,
people will constantly say, you just said it here, well, what's the fair thing? They want a sliver of this land, 1/5 of the territory. Yeah, they tried like 3, 4, 5 different wars to get more, and they lost. You can't continue to go back to the first try over and over and over again and demand the deal that was on the table before. You walked away from the partition plan in 47. You can't go to war 5 times and then keep going back to another set of borders.
So Israel just keeps getting to take more and more land. So you're just in favour of the wiping out of Palestine, you genocidal freak.
Always one generation behind when it comes to accepting some type of actual peace deal. So as long as Palestinians have people like Omar internationally that will support them in an unlimited delusion to fight forever, Palestinians will never try to accept peace. And they shouldn't. They really should. There's no reason to.
And it's so ironic that he's saying this because it's literally the opposite way round. Israel will never look to peace whilst it has America signing its checks and giving it unlimited support to the United Nations. Why would it ever need to look to peace? War is working perfectly fine for Israel.
Yeah. So, but Omar, just what, in one sense, if you have public polling that shows some 70%, this was from a Palestinian polling firm in December, 72% supported what happened on October 7th. So, and we can talk about why, and we will, I'm sure. So with all of that said, what now? What if if you were in charge of Israeli foreign policy in a hypothetical sense, and I think this will be a response to what Stephen just said, what happens now to get to a position where, to your point, there can be justice?
I'm happy to address that, but I have to go back to a particular point. The idea that Palestinians are rejectionists because they have so much international support, I think, is just thoroughly absurd.
It is
Palestinians
absurd.
are paying an unbelievable cost every single day. Their lives are completely brutalized under occupation, and the idea that they see no cost to continuing to fighting on forever is just completely ridiculous. It's detached from reality. It's as if you're unaware of what Palestinian conditions are under Israeli occupation. The reason...
What is this?
Your organization engage in peace talks with the Israelis?
You don't mean exactly peace talks, you mean capitulation, surrendering.
Why not just talk?
Talk to whom?
Talk to the Israeli leaders.
That's kind of conversation between the sword and the neck, you mean?
Well, if there were no swords and no guns in the room, you could still talk.
No, I had never seen any talk between a colonialist case and a national liberation movement.
But despite this, why not talk?
Talk about what?
Talk about the possibility of not fighting.
Not fighting for what?
Not fighting at all, no matter what for.
Yeah, people usually fight for something and they stop fighting for something. So you can't tell me even why should we speak about what?
Well, stop fighting.
Or what? Or talk about stop fighting why?
Talk to stop fighting, to stop the death and the misery, the destruction, the pain.
The misery and the destruction and the pain and the death of whom?
Of Palestinians, of Israelis, of Arabs.
Of the Palestinian people who are uprooted, thrown in the camps, living in starvation, killed for 20 years, and forbidden to use even the name Palestinians.
They're better that way than dead, though.
Maybe to you, but to us, it's not. To us, to liberate our country, to have dignity, to have respect, to have our mere human rights, is something as essential as life itself.
Absolutely based, and also just pointing out that Australians being dickheads in interviews is not a new thing, because that was from 1972. So, facts. For 20 years, is that referring to the Nakba? Roughly speaking, yes, because it was, what? It was, yeah, about 15, 20 years earlier, yeah.
Why they were willing to bend over backwards. I mean, if you look at the history of negotiations, you look at the Palestine papers that got leaked shortly after, I think back in the mid-2000s, it's obvious that Palestinians were bending over backwards to try to make that deal work. And Israel insisted on expanding more and more settlements. And yes, you can say that Palestinian violence was ongoing at the time, but so was Israeli violence. I mean, the attack that happened on the mosque in Hebron, where 30 Palestinians, nearly 30 Palestinians were killed by a Jewish terrorist named Baruch Goldstein, that happened during the so-called peace process. And Israel responded by putting Palestinians in Hebron under curfew to prevent any possible retaliation. Those are the conditions, but nobody looks at that incident and says...
Well, you don't even have to go back to the past. Look at what's happening right now, right? The Israeli government, while pretending that they're the partner for peace, they're the adults in the room who just want peace and solidarity and all the rest of it, and are more than happy to negotiate a Palestinian state, are literally still sending in armed personnel to help settlers take more Palestinian land in the West Bank, where Hamas don't exist. It's ridiculous. It's a fucking embarrassment that the world is playing this fucking game of charades constantly.
Oh, well, there was Israeli violence, therefore the Israelis, were not, that's the reason why they can't.
All over Israeli history. There was a massacre in Hebron in 29 where a bunch of Palestinian Arabs killed
The point I'm making is
so look at him smiling and just being flippant about it. He doesn't care. Destiny doesn't care about any of the dead people. He doesn't care about any of this. This is just debate bro content. It's just fucking content for him. God, he's scum.
That this is besides the point, that yes, we can point to individual atrocities, and that does not change the fact that throughout the peace process, if Israel were genuinely interested in allowing for a Palestinian state to exist, they would not have spent the entire so-called peace process taking up more and more and more of the West Bank. So it's the disingenuous nature of Israeli policy that's the reason why this is a problem. Now, to your point of what now?
Yeah, I was going to say they are genuinely interested in the peace process, and you're in charge.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Right now, we have a situation, right? There is a problem of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians support groups like Hamas. You have a majority of people in Israel, overwhelming majority, support the most vicious policies of the Netanyahu government and just carrying on, and they think that they're not going far enough in Gaza and so on. And that just, it's important to know that hatred is a symptom of the conflict and not the cause of it. People get this stuff backwards. When you think of apartheid in South Africa, there was plenty of hostility. And we eventually had a reconciliation process between white and black people in South Africa, but only after apartheid fell. That's when you can have reconciliation. But the idea that you can try to work on how people feel about each other in the midst of one side occupying the other, controlling every aspect of their lives and brutalizing them day in and day out, there's no surprise that there are hostile feelings. And yes, when Palestinians do respond with violence, Israelis who are out of touch with the reasons why all of this is happening are going to develop hostile feelings as well. This is a moment in which the international community has to step in. This is not about making Israelis and Palestinians like each other right now. This is about making sure that one side does not get to dominate the other until the end of time. And the status quo leading up to October 7th is one in which Israel dominated every aspect of Palestinian life.
Exactly. This is the point I've made constantly going forward, right? For years in my content. It's that there are too many people, and this isn't both siding it in the sense that I think there's a moral equivalence between the two sides in general. I mean, certainly in the West Bank with Hamas, and with the Likud and their equally rabid scumbags in the Israeli government. Both sides in that particular dichotomy, both sides need there to be war. Neither Hamas or Likud can get by in a peaceful situation because they're not relevant in a peaceful situation. They are the extreme response to the extreme situation. So they need to continue the extreme situation in order to continue to survive and exist as credible governing bodies, right? And so they're just going to continue the slaughter, regardless. And so it is up to the international community to go in there and stop this shit. If literally necessary, the physical stopping of it, like a peacekeeping force of some fucking variety. Demilitarized zones between each of the places. The physical removal of these illegal fucking settlements. America pulling its fucking embassy out of Jerusalem. Ridiculous situation. That's the only way you can have a two-state solution. That's the only way in which that could possibly survive. At least in the short term. You know.
So you can say, yes, both sides hate each other, but one side is in charge of everything.
Even in
one
ethics.
side gets to decide whether they want to put the people of Gaza on a diet, as they were talking about, when they first imposed the siege on Gaza. Just Palestinians don't get to decide how much food Israelis get. They don't get to demolish Israeli homes at will whenever they feel like it. They don't get to humiliate Israelis at checkpoints day in and day out. So because there's a dynamic in which one side is imposing an illegal occupation over another people and taking over their land, that has to come to an end, and you can bring it to an end through international pressure, primarily from the United States as the country that has the most leverage over Israel, to say not another penny until that occupation ends. And when that occupation comes to an end, we can talk about sorting out the exact specifics of how we get more conciliation and cooperation between Palestinians and Israelis.
And when it comes to international support for...
That's literally true, by the way, yeah. I agree with what that motherfucker just said. Facts. Thank you, Rohak, for gifting a sub to Ethics Dave. Much love. Much love.
Palestinians, there's one side that has had the international support of the world's great superpower, and the political and military support as well, Israel.
What about the Soviet Union supporting the Arab states?
The Soviet Union...
The Soviet Union, Destiny, little breaking news for you here, hasn't existed for 30 fucking years. Moving on.
Has had a very complicated relationship.
To be clear, the Soviet Union supported the Arab states before the United States. The United States didn't truly start supporting Israel until about 66, 67.
The Soviet Union also hasn't been here since 1991.
That's true, but the conflict also didn't start after the 91, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But
the point is that Israel has...
Yeah, but it's not relevant to current affairs, is it? It's not relevant what the Soviet Union, a non-existent entity... especially considering two of the former parts of that country are still engaged in a bloody slaughter themselves in the parts of eastern and southern Ukraine. Jesus Christ, Destiny, what fucking world are you living in? How do the people of Yugoslavia feel about this? That is a stiff dick of poop. What about those of the Upper Volta or Bechuanaland? How do the people of Gran Colombia think? Thank you, Elliot Werman, for gifting a sub. Much fucking love to you. Yes, we're on a hype train, which means I've got to go and finger... What was his name? Oh, fuck's sake, I've totally forgotten his fucking name. I did search it earlier. Baruch Goldman. I've got to go and finger Baruch Goldman. So, yeah. Kev is older than Soviet Union dissolution. That is true. I was very young, but I was technically alive during that, yeah. There was 91. It was actually, I think I'm right in saying, either Christmas Day or Boxing Day of 1991 that the Soviet Union officially disbanded. Goldstein, apologies, Baruch Goldstein. There you go. What is this? What the fuck is... What? Who or what the fuck is Cyber Trunksy? What the fuck is that? Who or what is Cyber Trunksy? What the fuck are you talking about, Navigator? I don't know what that is. I mean, I might not finger that person, but I don't know who they are. What state solution are you for, Kev? I honestly don't think there's any solution that can currently work. In theory, two-state solution would probably be better and more likely to stick, I think. And has some international backing. So if there were serious moves to in that regard, that would be probably for the better. But I don't see that as plausible at the moment at all. If you finger the trunk of a Cybertruck, you will lose your finger. That is literally true. Yeah. Cybertrunk, see. It's the Cybertrunk pussy. Well, wouldn't that be Cybertrussy? I don't know. Well, look, Navigator, you've confused me. I told him to call it Cybertrussy. Well, that's what it would be called. Yeah. Anyway, we're on a hype train, so I've got to go and finger someone. Anyway, you can make the hype train continue to go choo-choo in a more aggressive and demonstrative fashion in the form of bits and subs. Yeah, anyway. I'm bad enough for this when I'm fucking sober, man. This is ridiculous.
Has had a lot of agency, and Benjamin Netanyahu in particular, as you know, the prime minister for most of the last 25, 30 years, has had an extraordinary amount of agency as well. And I wanted to read to you a piece of an essay published in Haaretz recently by Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari. He writes, "Given the murderous nature of Hamas, this time its allies gave Israel free rein for many months to conquer Gaza, liberate the Israeli hostages, change the situation in the street."
And it has singularly failed to do that, by the way.
According to Israel's best judgment, and create a new order in the region. The Netanyahu government wasted this historic opportunity and also wasted the bravery and dedication of the soldiers of the IDF. The Netanyahu government...
True, but think of all of the spunk they've been able to extract from those dead soldiers. A lake. A lake of dead soldier cum. Saltier than the Red Sea. Or Dead Sea, not the Red Sea.
Failed to exploit its battlefield victories to reach an agreement on the release of all the hostages and to advance an alternative political order in Gaza. Instead, it decided to knowingly inflict on Gaza an unnecessary humanitarian disaster, and in so doing, inflicted on Israel an unnecessary political disaster. One by one, our allies have become horrified by what is happening in Gaza, and one by one, they are calling for an immediate ceasefire and even for a weapons embargo on Israel.
Yep.
Even during the worst moments of October 7th, Hamas was nowhere near vanquishing Israel. But the ruinous policy of the Netanyahu government following October 7th has placed Israel in existential danger. So when I ask you, it seems like a pretty fundamental irony that if Israel had listened to critics like Omar and myself after October 7th, who warned against enacting violence just for the purposes of revenge and potentially for ethnic cleansing of Gaza, they would ironically and paradoxically be in a much stronger global strategic political position than...
Yeah, they've way overplayed their hand. They were given a blank check by the international community. Thank you everyone for the hype train. They were given an absolutely blank check by the global community, i.e. the Western global community. The ones who are, you know, the financiers and backers and supporters of this nonsense. And they went to the nth degree with it. And now they realise, oh, shit. Maybe we've gone too far. Like, if it wasn't for the international backlash against them, they'd have already, fucking annihilated the Rafah camps. 100%. But they've lost so much support around the world with this shit. They really are making a rod for their own back with this. And it's partly generational. They may find themselves in 20, 30, 40 years. Actually, the majority of people don't support the state of Israel anymore. From their perspective, they might not care because by that time they may well have stolen all of Palestinian land and therefore the Zionist dream will be complete. Who knows? But they will, I think, they will have increased hatred towards Israel enormously.
And they are now, where they're facing not just isolation, but charges before the ICJ and potentially before the ICC. So are they making a mistake in following kind of the more bellicose advice that they're getting from their so-called allies?
That's a touching essay. Who was the alternative order politically besides Hamas that would have risen up in the Gaza Strip? If there,
the Palestinian Authority, who previously did rule there until Israel decided that he wanted to split the Gaza Strip and the West Bank in order to create a divide and rule conquer strategy where they could cut it off bit by bit. They empowered Hamas in that area. They actively supported the growth of Hamas in the West Bank. Sorry, in the Gaza Strip, in order to cut the Gaza Strip off from the West Bank. Benjamin Netanyahu and his ilk have been very honest about that. I say not honest, but like they've been open enough about it that we know that that took place. They created this. They set the ball in motion for October the 7th to happen. Hamas needn't have been there. They could have just actually negotiated in good faith with the Palestinian Authority decades ago, and this needn't have happened. None of this had to happen. But Zionism will never accept anything less than 100% victory. Even if it means eradicating every single fucking Palestinian.
there was an alternative political order, I would love to hear it. Even in the West Bank, there's a reason why Abbas suspended elections 20 years ago. Even in the West Bank, Hamas enjoys pretty broad support.
I mean, there are answers to this question.
It does now.
Do you want to take that?
It does now support Hamas because you've, again, as discussed a second ago by myself, the Hamas exists because they are the extreme, quote-unquote, solution to the extreme situation you've placed the people of Gaza in. The people of Gaza have now been placed back into the most extreme version of the extreme situation, and we've seen the unpopular Hamas government there massively gain in support because they're the only people who have any chance of defending them. The international community isn't going to do it. They're the only people, the only minor bulwark between them and Israeli tanks. So yeah, they've got a lot more support than they had 6 months ago. A lot more support. Again, Israel, or should I say the Israeli government, the extreme Zionists, propping up Hamas, while saying that they're trying to destroy Hamas.
I mean, it's,
well, also, hold on, wait. Well, before he does,
Sure.
also to elaborate a bit on the military objectives, I think Hamas needs to go. I don't think that there's any future that happens where Israel can negotiate anything, whether it's peace or war, with Hamas remaining as the government in the Gaza Strip. I don't think any of the surrounding Arab states wanted Hamas to remain as the government in the Gaza Strip. It's a disaster. You've had a series of conflicts. In 2008, you had Khaled. 2014, you had Protective Edge. 2018, you had the response to the Great March of Return. And
wow, he really has read the Wikipedia page.
now in 2023, you had a massive attack on October 7th. The idea that you would just allow them to stay here after spending at least a year preparing for what was probably, I think, the single largest day of violence against Jews since the Holocaust, that's an untenable position.
He really does know all of the Hasbro talking points. He's, fuck me, he is a well-briefed little fucking attack dog.
I don't think a single other country or person in all of human history would be asked to keep a government like that in place.
Can we pause for 1 second on the quote response to the Great March of Return? For people who don't know, the Great March of Return was a civil society-led Gaza initiative that was a nonviolent demonstration where every Friday people would meet and kind of march to the fence, symbolically gazing out at land that they had lost over the years. The IDF responded by killing a pretty significant amount of Palestinians, but also maiming, I believe, tens of thousands, to the point where the UN put out a report noting that it had become commonplace to see people walking around with one leg, missing an arm. There were IDF soldiers who said, yeah, we were told shoot out the legs. You know, one guy said he hit like 40 plus legs, like in a single day.
The most moral army in the world is a thing that people literally claim about the soldiers who did that. Mental.
Hamas opposed this at the start because it was nonviolent, because it was civil society led. Hamas eventually caved under public pressure and ended up supporting the Great March of Return, which I think goes to your question, what is the political order that can replace Hamas? If there is a nonviolent movement that can gain traction, then Hamas is defeated by that. Hamas is pressured into supporting that just by the kind of public support for it, like happened with the Great March of Return. The Israeli response was not to say, wow, let's embrace this nonviolent civil society-led movement and marginalize Hamas and reach a deal with this Palestinian force that could even see a unification between the West Bank and Gaza toward a long-term peaceful solution. It was, let's annihilate this. Let's shoot and kill and maim the peaceful protesters, which only then fortifies Hamas's position and allows them to say that we were right all along. We told you can't deal with Israel. We warned you against this. That violence is the only way.
C-SPAN's Dan, you're quite right. The dick riders, the Destiny dick riders out there, who have tried to defend his shit. Like, I mean, the title of this stream has got the word cookies in it, right? Or cookie rockets, whatever. Because it's a claim that Destiny makes at some point during this. Because I've seen the clip of it, and it's amazing. He claims that Israel denying cookies being allowed to be sent in to, feed children or whatever, or just feed humans, was because Hamas were deconstructing the cookies to get the sugar to create fuel for rockets. They were making rocket fuel out of cookies. A claim that even Destiny has now backtracked from because it's bollocks. Absolute nonsense, of course. But the dick riders were all out there trying to claim that it was true and it was a thing that can happen. No, what Hamas do, and this, by the way, is not even a new strategy that Hamas have invented. This happened during the Second World War. Leningrad it was famously done there. If your opponent throws so many munitions into your area, a certain percentage of them won't explode. That's just the nature of war. That's what projectile explosives are. That's what happens. And so you collect the unexploded ones, you very, very carefully deconstruct them, and you take the explosives out of them, which you can then use on your own bombs. Or you take out the fucking, things like that. This is how you create these things. It's mad. Watching Femi versus Graham, which is fun. Mad Cat, are you literally just here to try and steal viewers from me? Like, don't get me wrong, you should go and watch Helena, just not when I'm streaming. What are you doing? It's mad. She literally works for Navarra. She's going to be bigger than me. You don't need to steal my viewers. Fucking hell.
Forward.
That was a fantastic retelling that is almost entirely fictional for the Great March of Return. It did start off as a generally
I'm
peaceful
only playing
protest.
Madcap.
The idea behind the March of Return was returning to Israel. The UN has released a report where they've gone over a lot of the shootings. It's very curious that if you actually read the entire report, you'll notice that almost every single shooting happens between 50 to 100 meters in range, which is curious. If these are, because I was told, I believe by, I think Finkelstein himself said, or it might have been Rabbani, that this is a crack team of Israeli snipers, but apparently their rifles only worked up to 100 meters. The reason why
maybe they're just lazy.
Or maybe the reason why is because there is a no-go zone between the fence and 100 meters, because when people get too close, people try to cut the fence open, people try to break through, which is what was happening towards the end of the Great March.
So the illegal fence and the illegal restriction zone was being enforced by the illegal occupying force, which means it's fine. And they were allowed to shoot them in the legs. You're a lunatic. You're an evil, evil lunatic. fuck you.
Choice but to shoot all those unarmed people.
It doesn't matter if you're armed or unarmed. If you're approaching an area that you're not supposed to be in, and then when people start to try to break through the fence, that's the rules of the border. If you try to cross any militarized border, you're probably going to get shot at. Also, towards the end of the Great March of Return, there were people that were throwing stones, that were sending over incendiary balloons.
They were throwing stones, so we had to shoot them dead. Lunatic. He's an ill person.
That were causing like fires to spread on the other side of the fence. All of this is documented even by the UN, and that was when the majority of the firing from the Israeli police happened. If you want to say that they shouldn't be shooting at people who were close to the fence because you don't like that policy or whatever, that's fine. But characterizing that as like just open firing into a bunch of innocent people that are standing there with the goal of just maiming people for no reason is the most unbelievable retelling of what happened towards the end of that event.
It's exactly what happened, actually.
Just to characterize it, just get a even more complete picture. Israeli policy is people in Gaza have no right to go in and out of the cage that they've been placed into. They're under complete siege. Their economy is in shambles because Israel does not allow them to trade with the outside world. They can't have an airport because Israel doesn't feel like they are entitled to an airport. Can't have a seaport.
Oh yeah, Jim. Destiny is the ultimate example of the liberal who will happily support fascism. Like Destiny is almost champing at the bit to support fascism in defense of property rights. He's fucking thirsty for blood. Most liberals will at least tentatively approach that situation when it comes time to do so. But he's like a headlong jumping in there. He is doing an active fucking Superman swan dive into fascism. He loves it.
When you look at the rates of unemployment, over 50% in Gaza at the time, and if those people who are trapped in this cage come a little too close to the border, then we open fire at them and kill them, even when they're unarmed, because that's border policy.
It's more than 6,000 according to the UN, quote unquote. More than 6,000 unarmed demonstrators were shot by military snipers week after week at the protest sites by the separation fence.
There's no denying that, yes, some people try to open up and some people send incendiary balloons over the border and so on. But by and large, when you look at the cases, human rights organizations have been clear about the fact that people were targeted when they posed absolutely no threat to Israeli soldiers. So Israeli soldiers opened fire on people and targeted specifically medics and journalists and children and people who are disabled in wheelchairs.
There's a very clever game that's being played when we say pose no threat to Israeli soldiers. There was one UN report that came out that analyzed it, that claimed that every single shooting except for one was unjustified. But the way that they got that is they didn't analyze that as an armed conflict. They analyzed that as a policing event. And when you analyze things internationally as a policing event, typically police aren't allowed to shoot or kill anybody unless they pose a direct threat to the individual.
Yeah.
Okay, but are you arguing therefore that that armies should be able to kill civilians who are unarmed that pose no threat to them? Why the fuck do you think that's a defense of that situation? You're actually a monster. He's actually just fucking evil. He's literally arguing that the IDF should be able to shoot and kill people that pose no threat to them. Because they're not police? What? What a cunt. What an evil cunt.
Why would it be analyzed as an armed conflict if one side wasn't armed?
Because Hamas was present.
This
it doesn't matter if they were shooting. If you've got an enemy military that is present amongst people that are performing.
Also, we had to kill loads of innocent civilians because there may have been some bad people. You're a monster. You're a monster.
There was not a military.
Hamas is considered the oppositional force, and if you've got people that are participating
and if you don't have guns at the time,
doesn't matter if you have guns or not.
Of course
guns
it does.
have nothing to do with being
International
an
humanitarian law is absolutely clear about the fact that a situation you can only kill combatants if they're in combat and they're armed. You can't find somebody.
That is absolutely not true. You do not become ousted combat. You do not all of a sudden gain the protections of a civilian if you're an enemy combatant without a gun.
Right, but virtually all of the people who were killed were not enemy combatants. So at no point did they gain or lose the rights of anything. They always had the rights of civilians, and Israel murdered them. You're sick. You deserve to have been cheated on and divorced. Get fucked.
You
if
actually-
at a
you
time
actually do.
if you happen to go home.
absolutely
Of
do
course you
not.
do. You should
I
familiarize
encourage
yourself
you
with
can Google
international Mediterranean law.
IHL, enemy
Sure,
combatant, and Google
sure, that's fine.
IHL,
Yes,
overstate
let's
combat.
do that.
That
But
is absolutely
just to go
not
back to a point that
Yeah.
you made earlier about sort of
Wait, hold on, just to be
Hamas
clear,
has
wait,
to
I just
go.
wanted so you're saying that like if there's a military and you're fighting the enemy and you guys are gonna lose, if you just drop your guns, you can just like run back and nobody can shoot
Yes,
at
if you drop your guns and raise your arms, you can't be
No,
shot
that's
anymore. You're
surrendering.
giving up.
That's
Yes.
different than running away. You can't drop your guns and just run away and you can't get shot because you have no firearms.
If you're a military threat at the time, it's a military engagement. You're
that's
fighting
not
with each
true.
other.
That is absolutely not true.
Okay, I just
We
see
can have-
Ryan's
we can-
fact-checking. Ryan's
We can have the
fact-checking.
control room look this up,
Sure,
but
you
you're,
could do it.
you're, you're
yes,
wrong about this. Yeah.
That's a level of detail. Again, you start like playing up imaginary
Combatant.
scenarios of
Okay.
somebody
It's not
shooting
a
at you
level-
and then dropping their gun and turning around.
No,
Can you
but
shoot
that's
them
what
or
your
not?
rule would lead to. We
Yeah.
have to be able to analyze. Like this is the
But-
problem. We can't even acknowledge
Let
like
me
the basic realities of armed conflict.
This brings up a really fundamental reality, actually, because Omar was talking about airports and the seaports, and I think we all agree it would be miserable to live in a territory that doesn't have an airport, doesn't have a seaport. The argument from Israel and supporters of Israel is that if you put an airport in Gaza, Hamas would immediately seize it and use it to use parts, use the technologies to kill Israelis.
Yeah, and nobody asks if you have an airport in Israel, will the Israeli government use it to import weapons from the United States that they then use to kill Palestinians? You see, there's an inequality here that we never really acknowledge.
And
You
I
know,
don't
we
think
talk-
that's unfair. I just mean, so what is like now? What is the path to creating a Gaza that can have an airport?
Do we think Hamas would use the airport and the seaport to bring in weapons?
I have no doubt that they would, exactly in the same way the Israeli government imports weapons and commits massive atrocities. Their terrorism against Palestinians.
What can
dwarfs
people
anything
in
that Hamas has ever
Palestine
done.
do
But
to
just-
create a situation where that's not, and what can people in Israel do, frankly,
Digging
to
up water
create a
tunnels,
situation
building
that's
rockets
different?
No, and
building
to
tunnels
Stephen's
and-
earlier point that which
See, it's just glib shithousery from him. That's all this is. He's just enjoying this as some shit posting fun. That's all Destiny's doing here. He's such an immoral fuck.
we did not address is like, he thinks the goal of removing Hamas from power is absolutely essential and you've got to do it. First, I want to point out that double standard is nobody says we have to get rid of the Israeli government.
Because the Israeli government is infinitely better than Hamas. It's not even close.
It's not.
No, it isn't. They're killing tens of thousands in Palestine. What are you talking about?
It's not by any
Better in
measure.
what
Really?
sense?
I'm serious.
Better
Hold
in
on.
what sense?
Better in that it's a democracy, better in that it responds
Well, a democracy of sorts.
to international global pressure, better in that their goal isn't the entire annihilation of a group of people. If you
Well, from the river to the sea suggests that they are, doesn't it?
You think that the
It
roles,
absolutely
if
is
you-
their absolute intention is the absolute erasure of Palestinians.
Then
from
how
that
is it
land.
the
That is
Palestinian
exactly what they're
population
doing.
has exploded in the
they're-
Gaza Strip over the
because
past?
they're doing it in slow motion. There's
They're
slow
slow motion going the opposite way? Is it like when you go
ethnic
faster than
cleansing in
light and you
Gaza.
go backwards
Yeah,
through
that's,
time?
That's
or-
a very, very cute
What?
talking point. But when you look at what actually Israeli policy has been for
Yeah.
literally decades, it's been confining Palestinians to smaller and smaller areas. You can see it unfolding in the case of Gaza. They've just given up on Gaza. They've basically besieged the entire thing. It's a cage. Palestinians can do whatever they want there. They don't care about Gaza anymore, and that's how they wanted to leave it. In the case of the West Bank, they absolutely are squeezing Palestinians into smaller and smaller areas. So you can talk about the Palestinian population increasing in terms of numbers, but they're in the areas that Israel is interested in taking over, they're absolutely decreasing. When you look at Jerusalem, every few years you look at it and the number of Palestinians in Jerusalem is actually decreasing. It's a deliberate policy of pushing Palestinians out. But so from my perspective,
Wait,
when you
when
look
you say
at
the number of Palestinians is decreasing, are you saying because some of them are getting citizenship for Israel now? Because Israel
No. Because Israel is demolishing their homes and replacing them. And in some cases, you see it actually on video of Palestinian families being thrown out of their homes in East Jerusalem and Jewish settlers come and take over those homes.
There is citizenship available for every person living even in East Jerusalem. There's a lot of people that don't want it because they don't want to be part of Israel.
Okay, and
Yeah, they don't want to be because they're Palestinian. Do you want to be a part of the nation of Paraguay? Like, what? Yeah, they're Palestinians. They don't want Israeli citizenship. Why would they want to be a part of a state that clearly despises them and kills their brethren? Yeah. That also doesn't give the Israeli government the right to go and take their fucking house. I honestly don't know. I don't know if I have the energy to bother with this shit much longer. It's so fucking depressing. Because he's so wrong and so disgusting.
Right? Do you think, real quick, because you mentioned between the Hamas and the IDF, do you think if Hamas ran Israel and Jews lived in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, do you think the situation would look the same, or do you think Hamas would treat them worse?
I have no idea.
Take a guess.
What would it work?
You wouldn't even.
What the fuck are you Yeah, let's just invent situations that are devoid of any historical functioning. It's nonsense. What the fuck are you talking about? What about if Hamas sprouted wings and were able to fly? What about if they could shoot laser cannons out of their dicks? What the fuck are you talking about? It's so pointless. Honestly, it's pointless talking to this guy or listening to the dumb shit he has to say. I don't know that I can carry on much longer. We're going to try and power through a bit, but what are the other sections? The Great March of Return, Israel military/human shields, famine/blockade. Is Israel committing genocide? Closing thoughts. Okay.
Couldn't possibly.
What would it look like to be treated worse than Gaza's being treated now?
A million times. It could be actual starvation. It could be actual diet.
There is actual starvation in Gaza.
So
people are dying by the dozen.
Exactly. Imagine if Hamas ran Doncaster. Be a nightmare, wouldn't it?
I understand we've had that. I wish I brought a list of me. I have like 52 different stories between.
I have 52 stories that I've been fed by lunatics online, or that I got from my online fucking research of just reading Wikipedia. Holy shit. Oh, this guy's a clown. This guy's a fucking clown.
In October and now, where verge of famine, imminent mass starvation, almost famine, about to starve. It's been happening for 6 months, and then prior to this, people say it's been happening for 20 years.
Dozens of children dying.
If you go by Al Jazeera reports, the number is 32, and that's the most favorable.
Wow, only 32 have so far starved. Well, that does sure sound like that might be the brink of some fucking famine shit, mate. And that's according to you, and I don't trust your fucking numbers for shit.
Al Jazeera re-reporting the Gazan health.
So that's acceptable for you.
I didn't say it was acceptable. I'm just saying the idea that this place has been starved for decades, and we have 32 possibly deaths to show for it.
You're conflating things. You're once again conflating things.
Not conflating anything. I asked you a very simple question that you're not going to answer, which is if.
Yeah, it's not a very simple question. You're asking a hypothetical, which is bullshit, and doesn't mean anything. The fuck are you talking about?
Hamas ran Israel. Do you think that the treatment would be better, worse,
I don't see the
same?
point of speculating about things that we have no idea what it's going to be like.
Because you said that the IDF is worse than Hamas.
Yes, in terms of the scale of the atrocities they've committed,
So
there's no question.
Okay, so in that case, do you agree that the United States is worse than Hamas, and that basically every single large country is worse than Hamas because of the scale of the country?
I would argue the United States is actually worse than Hamas. Is there a country they haven't fucked with? Is there a country in that region they haven't bombed? They've helped turn Libya into a slave market state. They've helped turn Syria into rubble. They bombed and slaughtered and tortured Iraqis. Ditto Afghanistan, and then just left and allowed the Taliban to stroll back in. Yeah, actually.
I think the genocidal campaign that Israel is currently engaged in Gaza is kind of unique. It's not commonplace for countries to engage in that level of violence.
When you say that, does October 7th count as genocidal? Or
let me just.
I just want to.
I would argue it does count as genocidal, albeit on a much smaller and limited scale. But yes, if you go in and slaughter indiscriminately civilians, yeah, that can be very much a part of what genocide is. But it killed 800 fucking people. 800 too many, but it's 800 compared to 30, 40, 50,000. I don't even know what the number would be up to now. Whilst at the same time continuing to do the genocidal land grabs in the West Bank as well. Just because one group of people is genocidal does not give you an excuse to be genocidal as well. Okay? I think we've discussed this previously, haven't we? The group of Holocaust survivors, young Jewish people during the 1950s, who wanted to kill as many Germans as Jewish people had been killed during the Holocaust. Right? These were people living in Germany, and they wanted to poison the water supply of major German cities in order to kill 6 million Germans. That was wrong. What happened to the Jewish people was disgusting and wrong. Retaliating by killing 6 million German civilians is not an adequate response to that situation. Genocide does not sanctify other genocide. Even if we say Hamas are the worst group of people who have ever lived in the history of mankind and are uniquely evil in their genocidal intent towards Israel, that doesn't mean that Israel gets to wipe out every Gazan. And for you to insinuate that point, because he'll never come out and say that because he realises how absolutely untenable that argument point would be. And you've got to bear in mind, Destiny is just debate-brained at this point. There's no actual, like, human left in him. He's like RoboCop, but for debating. He's just a mechanical device that just wants to debate the most easy-to-win points. That's it. He doesn't give a fuck beyond that, okay? He realises that's an untenable point. He can't win that. That argumentation point is disgusting. So he has to insinuate it. He has to let the audience make that connection themselves. He's a fucking monster and an intellectual coward as well. John, I'm going to ask you nicely to chill the fuck out in YouTube chat, because you've literally just said, because you're in turn denying explicitly genocidal intent on the part of radical Islamic groups, even though I literally just said that Hamas are genocidal towards Israelis, and indeed more broadly towards Jewish people. The same is true, of course, of the Houthi groups as well, who's, you know, death to the Jews, etc., etc. Yeah, there are radical Islamist groups who are genocidal towards Jewish people. Don't fucking impugn me with obviously disgusting points that I don't believe, okay? If you make another such statement in my fucking chat, I will just block you. I don't mind you being rude to me. You can call me names, you can call me a cunt, say you disagree with me. That's fine, I've got no problem with that. Don't fucking lie about me. Okay?
You're so good. You're so good at saying so many things and having me chase the ball into different directions.
Let me just be very clear, and then you can answer everyone.
Sure.
Okay? I am not saying so many things. I will ask a very clear question. You won't engage. And then
sorry, yeah, Houthis are a curse upon Jews, not death too. Okay, but yeah, I mean, a curse upon. I don't think they were asking for a good curse upon Jewish people. It's not like they're asking for Jewish people to be cursed with being able to dance really well or something, you know. You're one of my favourite internet cunts. Well, I am glad about that. Thank you, Marcus. Much love.
you're going to yap about a whole bunch of unrelated stuff like genocidal campaigns. I'll read it one more time.
Whoa, time out, Home Slice. How is a genocidal campaign irrelevant? Also, can we just point out that Ryan Grimm there, honestly, I think he wants to shoot laser beams out of his eyes to explode Mr. Divorcelli's head. Look at that shit. He honestly wants to fucking... If looks could drop nuclear bombs on people, it would. Oh no, I'm not saying Jewish people can't dance. I'm just saying that I don't think the curse that is being asked by the Houthis is a good curse. Look, you could curse people with possibly good things. I'm pretty sure you put a curse on Wayne Rooney earlier. No, I put a curse on Wayne Rooney several months ago, mate. Yeah. No, that guy was always a fucking fail.
Not going to answer, I understand. My very clear question was, if Hamas was in control of Israel, and then the IDF in Israel was in control of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, do we think that Hamas, who would now own nuclear weapons and a full military and everything, would they be treating the Jews?
No, Israel doesn't accept that they have nuclear weaponry. So I don't know what are you talking about. Hamas wouldn't have nuclear weaponry if they were in control of Israel. Israel's a small bean, ooh-woo.
Better or worse than the Jews are treating the Palestinians?
Yeah, and my answer is I don't know.
Okay, of course.
So, you mentioned that Hamas has to go. I think the Israeli government has to go by that logic, and the question then becomes, what cost?
Honestly, if I could snap my fingers and get rid of Hamas and Likud, that honestly, the Middle East peace situation would be so much better. If I could just Thanos snap those dickheads out of existence, I think it would make the situation immeasurably better. Wouldn't solve the problem. There would still be underlying problems and all the rest of it, but it would remove a lot of the stumbling blocks to potential, peace. It would make a peace solution possible, whereas currently it is impossible. Has Divorcelli been to Israel? I don't know. Probably not. I've not heard of him doing so. But I don't know. Is the top? I'm not sure.
Acceptable to impose on Israeli civilians in order to get the Israeli government out of power? Would you impose starvation and all that? Of course, nobody would endorse that. Everybody understands that that's a completely monstrous idea for a government that has committed far greater atrocities than Hamas has. And then you have the second point of, if you want to get rid of Hamas, it might be useful to ask yourself how Hamas came into being. How did they come about?
True.
How did they get support? And it's obvious that brutality towards Palestinians is how Hamas came into being, because they created it literally. And it's even if you want to leave out the part where Netanyahu was effectively indulging their existence as a means of dividing Palestinians. Israeli politicians have been quite explicit about the fact that they see this as a useful policy to prevent a Palestinian state from existing. But Hamas gained support as an alternative to the Palestinian Authority that was pliant, that was bending over backwards to try to accommodate Israel. And they said, no, we can get you freedom because we're going to fight. And that's how they gained power. And if your idea is to defeat Hamas and get them out of power by brutalizing Palestinians even more...
Also, can I just say, I apologise for all of the anti-Semitism from all four of the people on this panel, because none of them have pronounced it correctly. It's Hamas. And none of them have pronounced it correctly, which means they are anti-Semites, clearly.
More. That's just completely delusional. Even if you get rid of Hamas as an organization, whatever replaces it, whether they call themselves Hamas or not, you're creating another generation of traumatized people who are going to be desperate for revenge, and you're just basically perpetuating conflict forever.
That was the point that I was making earlier. Some of the founders of Hamas, as children, lived through massacres in Gaza in the 1950s. This is well-known history. It doesn't justify what they did, but it raises questions about whether or not tactically, strategically, those massacres worked to Israel's benefit. Now, if you are Netanyahu and you want to divide Palestinians and the extremists are good for you, then it does work to their benefit. But if you're trying to defeat Hamas or the ideology of kind of armed resistance to Israel.
And if you really want a two-state solution.
And if you really want a solution to this crisis, then why would more cowbell, like more violence, why would that finally work?
I don't think more or less violence will work. There has to be.
We could try less. We've tried more.
It's not less, hasn't, of the entire history of the Palestinian people against...
So it's not about more or less violence. You think they're doing the correct amount of violence and need to continue doing that exact amount of violence until it works. Very sensible, very grown up. I presume whoever is feeding him this bullshit didn't give him an answer to that particular point and he just had to think on the fly and his answer was dreadful. I don't know.
Against Israel since '48 has been one of violence, nonstop.
All right,
so the idea that if you're just peaceful for a little bit, it'll fix things isn't going to work. The Palestinian people don't want peace; they want justice, and in their mind right now, justice has to do with acquiring some amount of Israel. Now, whether that is the entirety of Israel into a single state or whether that's a two-state solution, again...
But that's not acquiring parts of Israel. If you're talking about two states...
Yeah, that's... Again, you can tell these are Hasbro talking points. You can tell these are like ultra-Zionist talking points that he doesn't quite understand. Because at no point is it getting a part of Israel. This is Palestinian land. They're not taking a part of Israel. They want their own land as a nation. But... according to the Zionists, all of Israel/Palestine is Jewish land. That's how they view it. In order for a two-state solution to happen, therefore, they would have to give up land. It's not theirs under international law or any basic morality. But to them, it's giving up land. And he's just copying points that other people have made. That's how you can absolutely tell. He's just parroting points that other people have made. He's read on some fucking Zionist blog that that's the case. He's scribbled it down on his piece of paper. And he's now repeating it to people who know better.
That's acquiring occupied territory that is not Israel's, and Israel has to withdraw from.
It's not anybody's. What do you mean it's not Israel's?
It does not belong to Israel. International law is extremely...
Palestine. Again, if you needed any more... If you needed any more evidence that he doesn't understand the situation, there you go. Who does it belong to? The Palestinians, mate. That's who it fucking belongs to. It's called Palestine, isn't it? You freak.
Extremely clear about the fact that they have to withdraw from that territory.
International law is not extremely clear. What are you talking about?
It is extremely clear.
You're going to reference a single advisory opinion written by the UN in 2004.
So basically, are you now denying that there's actually a Palestine at all? There's no Palestinian state? In which case, why are you pretending that a peace solution is possible?
An endless mountain of UN resolutions that make absolutely clear that Israel has no right to be in the occupied territories.
Yeah, and resolutions.
Before we get into the resolutions, since you raised the virtue of the Israeli government, I did want to ask if you had seen the Plus 972 article on the Lavender AI program. I imagine you saw this.
Yeah, I read through it a bit.
So let me read you.
I read through it a bit. So Destiny wants us to believe that he's read actual resolutions, like in-depth legal documentation, but yet when it comes to this article, I've read through it a bit. You know what? I'm not going to bother anymore. He isn't worth listening to. I'm not interested in what he has to say. He's such an ignorant twat that I don't care what he has to say. It isn't relevant to anything. We don't need to listen to him. So on that note, I'm gonna go to bed because it is past midnight and I'm beginning to sober up, and I don't want to be awake for that process. So yeah, let's take a look at who is going on Twitch. Who's going? Hannah's raided in a couple of times, so I'll send everyone over to Hannah. Yeah. Hannah Reloaded is a cool person. Go and say hello to them. And I'll be back possibly today. It depends how bad the hangover's going to be. Because trust me, I am going to be absolutely rocking when I wake up. I was day drinking. Like the kickoff was fucking early today, so I was all over the place, you know. Yeah, so it's going to be rough. So I might be back today, or I might not. I might come back Monday. I don't fucking know. Anyway, thank you all for listening and watching. I'll be back at some point. Peace and love to you all. No pass around.